Call the meeting to order for the Breezy Point City Council on Monday, November 1st, 2021. Item 2 on the agenda, I'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, moving on. Item number 3 on the agenda is consent agenda items. So under consent agenda, item A, council minutes for October 4th, 2021. 3B, approval of September claims totaling $32,939.96, which includes 2860E, 2861E checks, 137050-137078, 137083, 137087, and 13709 through 13709.4. October claims totaling $49,875.09. Electronic checks 2869E and 2871E, and checks 137122 through 125, 127-137, 139 through 143, 145 through 147, 149 through 152, 154 through 162, 164 through 171, and 173 through 175. 3C, return of donated shotgun. 3D, update of 2020 census number. And 3E, approved purchase and ordering of 2022 budgeted PD SUV. Do I have a motion to accept the consent?
So moved.
Okay, I have Councilmember Bakken. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Councilmember Little High. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on. Item number 4 on the agenda is open forum. Is there anybody here at this time who wishes to address the council in open forum? Please come forward. State your name and your address.
Hi, my name is Kathy Malone. I'm 30125 Robin Lane in Breezy Point. And our household pays property taxes. We as taxpayers have questions about the proposed community center because the information has been very vague. I have several questions, make it short. What is the tax implication for this center? It's my understanding that we will be assessed a 10% levy for city debt and upcoming multi-million-dollar projects, according to the minutes in September. We need to see the numbers, and we can a population of 2,319 people sustain any more assessments? Will the majority of non-users be supporting the users? My other question, hypothetically, the taxpayers of Breezy would build, maintain, employ workers, and manage financially such a center. Can a community of this size fiscally do this? Is it fair to ask our taxpayers to support it financially? Also, who would access it? Will the resorts in the community, as taxpayers and members, have a membership to hand out free passes? Will resort workers, visitors, guests of visitors, hockey players who are non-resident get access through passes of residence? Taxpayers build it, maintain it, and then the people will come. Also, residents use private clubs. Pequot has SNAP, Cross Lake has the Cross Lake Fitness, Nisswa has Anytime Fitness, and our residents use these private businesses. We have a government competing with business, and I don't think that's right. please consider all fiscal aspects of this project and hold the line on this endeavor, and I'm not in favor of it.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who likes to address the council at this time in open forum? Come forward.
May I interject?
Yes.
Typically, will you say that also when there's an item on the agenda, we don't take comments from open forum?
Okay. So is this open forum comment dealing with the community center as well?
No.
Okay. You may come forward. State your name.
Okay, Jerry Schroden, Breezy Point Timeshare. I know the city's been looking at for a while now our coverage on fire departments and jumping around back and forth, discussing a lot of things. About 20 years back or whatever, our group of our owners associations donated in excess of $100,000 to support the local volunteers for first responders, and also for a lot of equipment that's over in the public safety building. And our primary motivation for this was twofold. First of all, there were no AEDs and stuff like that around at that time, and we had limited first responders. Now we've got maybe some of the best, and certainly in this part of the state, if not in the whole state. But the other one is the ISO ratings on insurance. For homeowners, you don't get beat up real bad, but our resort commercial properties, we just get savaged with insurance premiums. And the ISO ratings that we finally were able to achieve once the marriage between Pequot's Fire Department and our local station here paid back our $100,000 many times over. And I just want to be certain that whatever we decide to do in the future, and I look at every time the building comes through, and I look at the fact that Breezy Point is kind of like the tail wagging the dog as far as the Pequot Lakes Fire Department. It appears that Breezy pays more than they do. And I see that, but we got to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater and end up with ISO ratings that, the 3 local fire departments where I live, none of them are fully staffed. Getting volunteers, staffing fire departments, it's becoming a huge commitment for a lot of people. And we can be very happy with what we have here. And that's, just be careful that we don't jeopardize that.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the council in open forum right now? All right, open forum is now closed. Moving on, item 5 on the agenda, excuse me, mayor and city council reports and committee reports. I will start off first. I'd like to start off taking the time to recognize Linda Gronholz. Many of you may have known her. She was very active in the community here. She served on our Park and Recs committee, I think, since 2013. She was on the Community Center Task Force. She was an election judge for us for many years. She did a lot of great things, very actively involved in the community, and unfortunately, Linda recently passed away unexpectedly. So it was sad for us to hear that, but we just wanted to take the time to recognize all the work that she did over the years for the city of Breezy Point, and she was very actively involved in so many different ways. So I just wanted to point that out. The next piece, fire department update. We are continuing to meet with neighboring fire departments. We basically have reached out to all the ones in the area now, Mission, Ideal, Cross Lake, and Nisswa. We have had responses back from Mission Township who said they were not going to, or were not interested in offering a contract due to the added costs and other issues. Cross Lake kind of was in the same boat. Along that line, I know we just recently received a letter from Ideal Township as well, their fire department, stating that they were unable to offer us a contract to provide fire services as well. We have had a meeting with the city of Nisswa. We talked about many different things with them. And so we're continuing to look at that, but also we continue to have conversations with Pequot Lakes as well. They have since communicated with us, wanting to continue to work with us. So they have created a special committee to review ownership alternatives and looking at some different things. Pequot Lakes Fire Chief also met with the Breezy Point City Administrator and provided an update on fire department's goals, staff, funding, and operations. So it's still a work in progress. For us, realize that we do have to give a 12-month notice to the city of Pequot Lakes. So we will have our contract that we'll be looking at this year, signing with them, but we'll continue to look at options, and Pequot continues to look at options as well. So I think all those different things, ISO ratings, all that is in play. We look at all those staffing abilities and what those are. We don't want to jeopardize those. So we're looking at all those different dynamics as we work through this process. And we'll see what happens as we go down the road here. Again, City of Nisswa is interested. They have let us know that they are interested in working with us too. So at this point, we're working with Pequot. We're seeing what they have to do, but we're also keeping the door to Nisswa open with regards to that too. So that's kind of an update there where we're at. We did attend the most recent fire board, and that was last Wednesday. City Administrator and I attended that. Breezy Point fire calls, basically for the third quarter of 2021, we had a total of 10, looks like 9 calls here in Breezy. So that's for the whole third quarter. That's July, August, and September. Pequot does continue to provide that service to us. And we continue to work with them. The meeting that we had with them last week was good. They've talked about different things that they're doing internally. And one of the things they are looking at is reducing the amount that would be paid into their relief association for their firefighters as a way of reducing costs down the line to the contracted entities. So that is one thing they're taking a look at. Pequot has also stepped forward and said as a city that they will begin putting money away every year to the tune of $20,000 to help with capital improvements regarding their equipment and stuff. So they are doing some things along that line. So we continue to work with them, and we'll continue to keep the public updated as to where we go with that. Moving on to 5B, to the city council members and their reports. I have B1, road committee. Either one of you want to grab that?
Certainly, I can recap that. We met at our October 13th Wednesday meeting. We reviewed the pop-up meeting that we had at the Pequot Lakes High School homecoming football game. We received some comments at that meeting. We also went over speed studies and traffic counts of the subject areas that we're looking at. And then we also heard from Jason Murray regarding some financing alternative ideas, just to give a brief summary on what happened there. Our next step, though, is to have a formal presentation from our engineering firm, Bolton & Mink, to go over that to the full Breezy Point City Council. So we are asking for a special meeting on Monday, October 15th at 7 p.m. November 15th, still a month behind. November 15th, Monday, at 7 p.m. And so we'd like to call for that meeting to occur.
Okay, so do I need a motion on that then? I need a motion to go ahead and have that special meeting set for November 15th.
Also move.
Okay, the first and the second from Councilmember Maroney and Councilmember Lillehei. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We will plan for that meeting on the 15th of November then. All right. B2, Planning Commission.
Planning Commission met last month. It was a kind of interesting meeting. They approved a IUP for Sharon Thorson for a winemaking business on site. And basically what this is it's like a class for people that want to learn how to make wine. And so it's very small scale. It was very straightforward, and that IUP was approved. And then we also had an extensive discussion on the interpretation of variance language for an accessory structure up on Timberline Point. And basically the conclusion was that they would work with planning and zoning to find an appropriate spot for this accessory structure that they wanted to put up. Went into great bit of detail on where they wanted to put the building, and the bottom line was the applicant really didn't have much choice as to where he could put it, so it was a lot of discussion. And then they also discussed creation of an R5 zone, which is basically up on the hill, and we talked about that in our previous meeting as far as moving forward on that, and that's going to be moving forward, and we're going to start drafting a new zoning, R5 zone up there, which will take into account the uniqueness of those buildings up there. So
Excellent.
that's about it.
Okay, thank you. All right. B3, Community Center Task Force. Councilmember?
Yes, I won't take your thunder, Lindsay, but there was a Community Center Task Force meeting on October 19th to go over the feasibility report. And that's what Seth is here to review with us today, later on the agenda. So I will hold for that.
Thank you. B4, Cemetery Committee. Councilmember Bakken.
I'm going to give you a twofer here.
Okay,
The cemetery committee and the airport, if I may.
sure. Keep the airport brief though, please. Thank you.
Very brief. Airport has ceased operations, and they've met all specs, state, et cetera, and they're closed for the winter. The hill one is closed.
Right.
The airport's still open.
Right.
And the cemetery committee celebrated their year. Thanks to all the people, great volunteers, and we had a great time at Deacon's.
Good. Great to hear. Excellent. Thank you. All right. B5, Personnel Committee. Councilmember Maroon.
Yeah, certainly. So the Personnel Committee met with a couple different subjects at hand. One of them was to discuss some funding opportunities that we have with our ARPA funds. This is an amount of $274,000 due to COVID relief. And one of the things that's kind of been hitting the news lately has been essential employee pay stipends, if you would. And so the Personnel Committee met and discussed and thought it would be something of wise to thank our staff with a one-time payment, and we talked about $1,000, to get us through these times. It was hard-pressing times, very untelling, it still is. And these are funds that we can use out of the ARPA funds kind of as a retention tool to keep our good, well-trained employees here. And this includes all staff, actually. We deemed all staff was essential. This goes from our police officers to public works directors and public works teams and city staff here. And so we'd appreciate a motion to approve such a payment on that, which would be on the 25th payroll of 2021. We do still need to do a memorandum of understanding with our union, which is our police officers. So we do have to still get that finalized, which would be in front of us the next council meeting.
Okay. So I have a motion from Councilmember Bakken. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Lillahei seconds the motion to approve a one-time $1,000 essential employee service stipend that will come out of our ARPA funds. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried.
Thank you. The second item that we had discussed, it hasn't occurred too often here in staff, but one of the things that we investigated also with this ARPA funding If you recall last year, the federal government allowed us to pay back, if you would, up to 80 hours of sick time related to COVID items. This is COVID testing purposes, vaccination, family members caring for, anything COVID related. And those it was a federal option, but it also came out of our CARES funding. And so we are able to extend that through the ARPA funding as well. And so while we haven't been struck that much, we thought it would be great to offer our employees that if they have been affected by COVID again yet in this year, which the federal did end last year, is that we would also reimburse that 80 hours again through that ARPA funding. Again, this is just for the 2021 year that we'd refund up to that 80 hours, showing proof and documentation of COVID related, and as you see in the memo here of what the regulations would be on that. So a motion to allow us to reimburse up to 80 hours would be appreciated.
So moved.
First motion from Councilmember Bakken, second.
I'll second.
Councilmember Ball seconds it. To approve reimbursement of employees' bank of sick, vacation, or comp up to 80 hours of total time off related to COVID-19. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried.
That is all.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to item 6 on the agenda. Administrator and staff report. 6A is our Wideseth presentation for the Community Center Feasibility Report.
Good evening. My name is Lindsay Krenz. I'm here with Widseth. With me as well is Ashley Martell and Joe Dubell from Widseth as well. Tonight we're here to present to you the findings of the feasibility study for the Breezy Point Community Center. The study is rather comprehensive, so I'll breeze through some of the pages and kind of touch on the highlights tonight. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me throughout the process. The first bit of information I would like to touch on the acknowledgements. We had quite the assembly of task force members, including city council members. Thank you for joining in. Councilmember Bakken and Councilmember Ball. City administration, and then also our specific task force members from the community. Everyone involved in this process really had a special part, and I think it really impacted a wide variety and a wide section of people from Breezy Point. So thank you, everyone. The introduction to our project approach. We broke this project approach into 4 separate categories. The first category is development of the task force. We then set out on regional facility tours. We engaged with the community, and then we've also developed some conceptual building renderings and floor plans for discussion purposes. So as we set out, our first step was the regional facility tours. We toured 3 facilities across our area of the state. The first tour was the Maslowski Wellness and Research Center in Wadena, Minnesota. This is quite an impressive facility. It's very large and comprehensive. We learned a lot of things that worked very well for that center and talked about some things that they would potentially do differently. The second tour we took at the Cross Lake Community Center. This is just up the road and actually very similar to a community center that we've heard across Breezy Point that something here would be able to be supported. We talked a lot about not wanting to compete with the Cross Lake Community Center, but how could we complement it? How could we have different types of amenities and then also maybe similar amenities like pickleball? So the pickleball team there could play the pickleball team here, for example. So there was a lot of excitement around those conversations. The last and final tour we took was the North Park Recreation Center. This particularly was focused around their aquatics facility that they have. It's quite impressive, much more robust than an aquatic center at any community center that I am familiar with, but nonetheless, it's a great regional example of fitness and aquatics here in our region. So after our 3 tours, the summary we took away was some very key points. Overall, arching comments were the lack of storage in a facility. So it's not really utilized square footage, but nonetheless, that was a resounding theme we heard across all 3 facilities. We also heard that the membership and fee structure varied quite significantly from facility to facility. Some very simple, much more complex also schedules are around. Many different brackets of membership fees and structures are all around our region. More pickleball, we heard that all over as well. And then operating costs. With an aquatic center, your operating costs are going to be significantly increased, but it is also a accommodation that is not regionally accessible for many people in the community. So it's one of those attracting factors that can bring people into a community, but it also drives your operational costs, so something to be considered. After we set out on our regional tours, we reached out to our local communities. Our task force was present at 3 individual community meetings, the first being the Golf Cart Rodeo on June 19th. This was really at the inception of the feasibility study, so we had a lot of questions, and we gathered a lot more questions during that first initial kickoff meeting. Our second community outreach event was the annual Monarch Butterfly Release on July 17th. This was a wonderful event. We had a lot of great community engagement. The word was starting to get out there. People were excited and very curious as to what a community center could mean for Breezy Point. The last and final community event was the Night to Unite on August 3rd. This was the culmination of all of the research and also some of the marketing. You see here on the screen, we have our banners that were posted around the city displayed at the Night to Unite. So we really encouraged people to take the online survey, which was hosted on breezypointcommunitycenter.com. This website is still active and the survey is still active. So as a tool for Breezy Point, we will continue to maintain this website for you until you'd like to take that over or decommission it, however we want to approach that. But that website and the survey is still active. The survey is a really important piece to this feasibility study, understanding what people in the community are willing to support or unwilling to support. What is the definition of a community center? I bet every single person in this room could come up with a different definition. We could very easily define what a grocery store is or maybe what a clinic is, but a community center is very unique per community. And so that's what this whole study was, is to really set out to define what a community center is, but not necessarily establish this is what it is. It's kind of gathering all the information and all the resources and presenting that in a logical method. So that's kind of the culmination of our research. So through the online survey, we had 518 submissions, which I think to my knowledge was a very good turnout compared to past surveys that maybe just gleaned a couple dozen survey responses. So I think that right there was a success. I think the message was shared and we gathered a lot of support. 79% of the people that took the survey were in support of a community center. 83% of those respondents were local residents. The median age was around 40 to 49 years old. The survey at this time had been open for about 95 days. I believe we're at about 105 days to this time. A lot of double income households. And then a lot of people that responded to the survey had no kids at home, which we thought were very interesting. The location, we surveyed many different locations around the community. Resoundingly, we heard that the location here near City Hall might be a preferred location. Several amenities that were voted on, we kind of ranked them in like the highest ranked or the highest voted amenity down throughout the amenities. Number 1 was the gymnasium. Number 2, a pool. Number 3, a walking track, weight room, and multi-purpose room also kind of rounded out the top voted amenities. There was others such as library and community kitchen, exterior garden, for example. So really great feedback we received. So the third and final phase of the feasibility study is the conceptual building design. We studied several sites. It's very hard to establish a dedicated building site, but in terms of this study, we decided just to kind of put together a thought, just to start conversation. So it's definitely not set in stone, but just a thought for scale, for comparison, and for discussion. So at first, we start with a building floor plan. So what does the building floor plan represent for us? Well, it represents square footage, it represents amenities and adjacencies. So the building floor plan that we've developed here on your screen is 27,000 square feet. Now, this can grow or this can shrink. This is just part of the study. We have to start somewhere for conversation. 3 main events or activities can happen in this building floor plan. We have areas centered around community, which comprise the multipurpose community rooms, indoor children's play space, a library and community commons, also a kitchen. We have athletic-centered facilities, so a fitness center, gymnasium, walking track, locker rooms, and potentially pickleball. You notice here on the screen, the fitness center is oriented in a way that it could potentially become a 24-hour fitness if it's monitored and secured properly with door hardware and security systems. The aquatics, we have this shown dashed in as a future potential. So we started with a smaller building footprint, conservative in nature, with the opportunity to have future growth. So today you don't have to necessarily commit to an aquatic center, but knowing that in the future it would fit in this particular plan and then potentially on a building site. So the aquatics represents swim lanes, a zero entry play, and potentially an exterior splash pad in the future. So what does this building look like from the exterior? This is just a concept. We have many, many different options available to us, but it's just fun to visualize what it could potentially look like. So on your screen, you see the rendering, a conceptual rendering of what this facility could look like, utilizing a lot of natural daylight, easily accessible from a main road. And then also on the left-hand side of your screen, you see a dashed in future growth opportunity for pickleball, for example. Conceptual site. So there's many different sites around Breezy Point that we can consider. The site that we chose just to study for conversation's sake is located just north of us here tonight, between City Hall and then also the Public Safety Building. So this potential building fits very nicely into that proposed location. It provides future growth opportunity. It works really well with the site grading. And then also works very well from a visibility standpoint. The more visible your community center is, the more popular it becomes, the more daily entries you have, the more involvement of your community. We're also taking advantage of some existing curb cuts from your existing roadway out here. So we're taking advantage of those curb cuts, so we're not adding additional traffic impediments into your main thoroughfare here on County 11. What does a facility like this cost? That was the big question we received over and over again, and we can really dive into that wormhole, but just for conversation's sake, we're going to stay pretty high level tonight. The main facility, minus the aquatics and the pickleball, is about 17,500 square feet. Again, we can grow that and we can shrink it, just depending on where we want to take this. Construction standards today are about $250 to $275 for those types of buildings per square foot. So doing the math, I'm not a math expert, but this is pretty easy math. So the estimate is about $4.5 to $5 million for a facility of that size. If we look at an aquatics / pool, the concept we have is a 5-lane pool. So that's about 7,000 square feet. Today's construction estimates are about $350 to $400 a square foot to construct an aquatic facility. So that estimates around $2.5 to $3 million just for the aquatic center. Pickleball is a very easy, kind of straightforward addition to the building, about 2,500 square feet, $200 a square foot for construction costs. That gets you around about $500,000. So all in all, at the end of the day, if you were to construct the entire building at about 27,000 square feet, you'd be between about $7.5 and $8.5 million. So where do we go from here? Again, this is all in concept. These are great ideas. It answers a lot of our questions, but I think it also generates a lot more questions. So how do we navigate that and where do we go next? This is kind of just a flow chart we put together of the typical building design process. So as today we're kind of in this lower left-hand corner, this is our feasibility study. This is the summer and fall of 2021, which we're completing here tonight. The next step, which we would encourage you to consider, is the preliminary design phase over the winter and spring months of 2022. This takes in consideration specific assessments on your site. What are the utilities? What's the groundwater level? Conceptual design. So we take the building and we'd start to evaluate how big does the fitness center want to be? Is it a 5-lane pool? Is it a 2-lane pool? Or is it a 10-lane pool? We don't really know yet. We're just having a starting point for conversation. We start looking into funding source investigations. And then also pull in a project budget estimate. So we're really starting to redefine those construction costs. We have big round numbers that we're playing with just based on industry standards. So we start to look at those much closer. So that's the next phase as far as preliminary design. The phase after that would be funding. So that's when you start to really understand the funding attributes of this project. How is it funded? When is it funded? What amount is funded? So we can really dive into all those specific questions. We've received a lot of questions on funding, rightfully so. Once you put your funding in place and your funding plan into place, then you proceed into the construction documents. So that's when you really start architecturally and engineering-wise looking at the building and how it's designed, and then you take those designs and then you bid them, and then you go into the construction phase. So if all in all falls into path here, it's about a 2 or 3 year long process to get from where we are today to a completed building. So you can kind of put yourself into this path and then adjust accordingly to how long or short one of these phases could be. So it kind of gives you an idea of what an actual facility could look like into the future. Any questions?
Council? Any specific questions?
All of us have been through this, thank you again. Great job.
Thank you.
Heard that last time.
I think it's a great report, and thank you for all the work that you've put into it, and I think it will be very helpful going forward for the city, so.
No, I agree, and I want to take the time to thank you guys for the work that you did, plus all the council members' work, plus the city, community people that helped out as well in the task force. It was a big undertaking, and a lot of information and time went into doing that. So a lot of information to absorb. I think the council needs to kind of, absorb that. What I would probably say is, I'm not sure where the council stands right now, but maybe we want to take some time to think about this and absorb it, and potentially, if we decide we want to take another step, which would be that preliminary design, we would need to have a quote put together of what that would look like, and potentially take a look at that. So I think that's kind of where we're at. I'm not sure what the council wants to do at this point. If you want us, we can always revisit this at a later council meeting, or we can move forward to have them put together a quote for us, maybe potentially to bring back at our January meeting.
I have some
Yes.
questions, comments, and thank you again for the report. I know the comprehensive plan, we've done this a number of times, and this has been brought up on the comprehensive plan that the community wanted a community center. So this is a great that we've taken that first step to get this done. On the report, the fourth page is answering specific questions while developing new questions. At what stage do we learn those things of how will you pay for, and what kind of staffing responsibility? What stage in the next steps do we learn those types of information?
That's a really good point. I think at every stage of the entire process that we've outlined here, there will be questions and answers, and hopefully more questions generated, and it just kind of continually engages that process. The preliminary design really starts to understand the building materials and types. The world we live in today, it's a very tricky. Structural steel, bar joists, precast concrete, those things are like a year out. So it's very challenging from a building perspective to kind of take our crystal ball and understand what the building materials want to be. So there's a lot of research that needs to go into how the building could actually be constructed. Joe can tell us much more about the site than I possibly could. What site is really, truly going to be the best support? We don't know until we really start to understand what's below the ground, where the water table is, what the grade looks like. There's a lot of investigation that needs to continue to happen once we know for sure this is this type of building and this is the size. We just kind of put something on paper for reaction, but until we really know the size and the specific amenities that we want to provide, we'll still have some of those questions. Then we get into the funding part of this. So what type of campaign do we want to put together? What type of funding council? What type of capital campaign? There's a lot of great tools out there that many smart people, more smart than I could, in the funding world, but there's a lot of great tools that we can help provide for that aspect. So usually once you're through the funding, you have a lot of those questions answered.
Okay. The last question I was going to ask too is the survey results. Will we be able to get that in raw data?
Yeah, absolutely, you can.
He's the computer guy.
Oh, I like that too. I like to see the raw data too.
Yeah.
I like to see the breakdown, so, absolutely.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to see the increases. We could watch the survey after these events, after the newspaper article or the WJJY radio interview. You could see the results. People were really engaged with the survey, so that was really fun to see. The efforts were really impactful in the community.
That's all I had at this time. Done.
I'd like to comment that the survey, I think, is really very, very, very well done. To get 518 responses and 83, over 80% of them from residents of Breezy Point, it really means that this is a targeted project. And as it's been alluded to, this has been a high point on the comprehensive plans for 20 years. And, that's one of the reasons that we wanted to start moving forward to it, moving forward on it, because people have been wanting this for years and years and years. And, I'm very much in favor of moving forward with the preliminary start to get I think we need to set some money aside for the 2022, budget. We do have some discretionary funds in there that we have set aside for this type of thing. And we need to be responsive to the citizens of Breezy Point that have been asking this for, like I say, over 20 years. And we need to say, okay, we're going to start moving forward. It's really a community identity, and there's one thing that Breezy Point needs is community identity. Just about anywhere you go, you say, I live in Breezy Point. You go, you live in the resort? Okay. Because, we are overshadowed by a very successful resort that has a lot of people coming here. People don't realize that, okay, we're a city, we're a big city. We're the third largest city in Crow Wing County. We need to have, some identity. And this is just one more step toward it. And if we enhance the community, we enhance all of the businesses, we enhance, it's a partnership with the resort. People can, I don't think the resort has a pickleball court, so if they want to come over and, pay to play or something like that, well, that's be more than welcome. So I think this is a good idea, and I think we should be moving forward.
Well, I think it goes back to probably tasking Whitesett to come up with a proposal that you could present to us of what's that going to look like, what's that cost, okay? And then we can determine as a council, where's the funding going to come from, how are we going to pay for it, is it something we want to take the next step in? But I think we have to have that first so that we can see what it looks like, what that dollar number is. And then it gives us time to kind of absorb some more of this stuff. Gives also an opportunity to get more survey information back in. So I guess I would propose that we, if the council is comfortable with this, allowing Whitesett to come back to us in January with the proposal for that preliminary design phase. And we'd have you on the council agenda then, and you guys could present that to us and give us all the details of it, and then we can kind of make a decision at that point what we want to do. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Sounds reasonable.
I'd be in favor. So
No.
move.
No, we have a consensus, so I'm comfortable with moving forward with that. They're just going to bring back a proposal to us, so I think we're good there. So, okay. Is there anybody, go ahead, Councilmember Bakken, go ahead.
Do you have anything else to say?
No, I don't at this time. Go ahead.
I echo what the two gentlemen to my far left said. 25 years of this. I'd be the 5th comprehensive plan, so it's been asked for every year. What I'd like to bring to everybody's mind is in our packet, the state demographer. The city of Breezy Point is now 2,574 people. 52 new builds this year. That's a record. The city's growing rapidly. The resort is expanding, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Is there anybody from the general audience that wishes to make a comment or address the council on this? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Feel free to come forward, state your name, your address, please.
Diane Williams. I was on council, 25, almost 30 years ago, when we started talking about this community center. And it's more than a community center. Realize it could also be a community shelter, an emergency place. Look what happened during COVID. They had to take over football stadiums or, all kind of places. What if we had the drought? What if we'd had an area that was badly burned and many people couldn't go home? That could possibly double as that. And we're not considering having it be free to outside members of the public. There would be a fee structure where, sure, you can come from Cross Lake and use the pool or have your kids take swimming lessons, but it's not going to be free to you to do that, but they'd be welcome. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for the community to get some identity, to have a place to recreate for people who are maybe off lake or not, people who've bought a timeshare unit to get to use those amenities. We need a place for kids to learn swimming. That was a big message from the school, the Pequot Elementary School. I just think it's a win. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to address us at this time? All right. Hearing no other comments from the crowd, we will move forward. We are on 6B, short-term rental follow-up update. And this is kind of a continuation from what the council discussed at our last council meeting in October. And basically, what we need to do is take a look at what we want to do moving forward as a council. And we basically have three options. Well, unless there's others besides the three. But one is to leave the current ordinance in place with no changes. Property owners operating a legal STR are still required to obtain a county license. So in other words, if we left our current ordinance in place, they would still be required to get the county ordinance or the county license as well. Number two is to adopt the proposed ordinance and repeal conflicting language from the current city ordinance. And conflicting language will be determined from what is adopted. So once the ordinance, if we did adopt the proposed ordinance, was adopted and taken in, then we could look at what it would be in conflict with and be able to clear that up. Three would be to accept the county short-term rental ordinance, and council action would be to remove conflicting city ordinance. Example would be limiting rentals to no more than 4 times per year and interim use permit requirements. So in other words, we'd accept the county ordinance, but then we would remove conflicting city ordinances that would conflict with what the county's was. And then, of course, if there's some other option that the council may have that they want to look at, we could do that. But we do have to do something. We have to make a move forward as to what we want to do. Now, we do have our task force that's sitting in the wings waiting to take action on this, but I think they're waiting for some direction from the council as to specifically what we want to do, because if we decide not to use the proposed ordinance, well then there wouldn't be any work for them to continue to work on. So again, we kind of left this at the last council meeting, but I said we were going to bring it back because we need to make a decision as a council how we want to proceed with this, because at our last council meeting there was a lot of discussion about enforcement of it, how that was going to work. We brought up the fact that if we're going to do the enforcement, we're going to have, somebody that's going to do that for us as a city, because our current staff does not have the ability to be able to take that on with all the things they already have on their plates to take care of, and particularly our police department. So we need to think about if we're going to move forward with a proposed ordinance and we're going to have the task force look at that, if that's the option or there's something else, then I think we have to be looking at those other pieces being a part of that, so that when we finally put that in place, those other things are being answered and taken care of. Otherwise, we're gonna be sitting there trying to deal with an ordinance that we're not able to enforce, the way the city needs to do that. And if we talk a lot about a city that's growing and it's large, and it's the third largest in Crow Wing County, however you wanna say that, then it's our responsibility to make sure that we're doing that, do our best due diligence as a city to the citizens of this community. Because it's not fair to them if we're gonna have an ordinance in place and we're not gonna enforce it. Doesn't make any sense. So, it's back to the council, what do you guys wanna do? It's the council's determination, what they wanna move forward.
Yeah, well, I'll start out basically with the number of responses that we had and comments that we had. We obviously need to do more work on our proposed ordinance. So what are we going to do in the interim? The number of ones that are already in place, it's kind of like trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube. You know, you just can't do it. Obviously, I think number 3 here would be the most, probably the best choice from a short term, and we can work with that. Because right now, having a interim use permit in conjunction with the county's licensing process, the two are just not compatible.
Correct.
You know?
I
And
agree.
So, let's get rid of the interim use permit, work on our own enhancement to that, and you know, the task force can take that on. I'll have to apologize because I just haven't had any time, because moving into a new house and all this other kind of stuff, it's been kind of hectic around the household. I haven't been kind of homeless since August, so that's another story altogether, but we won't go into that. But I think number 3 would be the most straightforward. We can, I've got a volunteer from, another volunteer from planning and zoning, so we have the task force basically identified, and as soon as I can get some time to get it organized, then we'll start working on that parallel. And then, like you say, it's going to have all public hearings and those types of things. I don't know if we want to go through 3 public hearings over an entire summer like we did last year. I think that fleshed out a lot of the comments, and I think it would pretty much be the same.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it would just have one public hearing on it once we get it finalized. So that would be my proposal, is to go with number 3, and because that's something we can actually get done here fairly shortly.
So, am I hearing potentially a motion?
I would make, if that's what you were looking for, unless other people want to make comments.
I got a comment or some input.
Yeah.
The lady first.
I guess I'm more in favor of option 2. I think the proposed ordinance that the task force came up with is better than the county ordinance. I think it makes the city some money as well. It does require some administrative work, but there is some money that comes to the city through that, through the licensing that way. I am absolutely open to, just like we would with the county ordinance, amending it, modifying it, and making changes to that to, as you say, maybe create some more ability to add enforcement to that. But I do think what we have drafted for number 2 is better than what the county has. There's more in it, there's more requirements, and it's better than what we have existing today for the city.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Bakken.
Thank you,
Your
Mr.
turn.
Mayor. I would tend to agree with the counselor to my left, option 2. And a recurring theme in the 3 public hearings we had was control and enforcement. Recurrent theme. We've had a problem in this city enforcing our zoning laws and controlling, period. My suggestion is teeth in the ordinance. You violate your rental once, you give you a pass. We'll give you a buy. You do it again, you don't put that property on a rental again. And that runs with the land. That's just a suggestion on my part, but it puts teeth in, and a complaint like we've had in last summer, that's helps with the enforcement. You send whoever out there, the planner, the police, I'm belaboring this, but enforcement and controls and teeth in it, that's going to make me, and you sign off on it, and that's it. End of story.
Councilmember Maroney.
Make sure I'm not on mute this time. Before I start, I know that our 5-minute timeline's coming up for the 1 hour. Do you want to take a break before I start?
Is it going to go over 5 minutes?
It may go for more than 5 minutes. Okay.
All right.
I just don't want to.
Yep, that's
run
fine.
into
That's
that.
a good point. Okay, we're going to take a short 2-minute recess, 2-minute recess, so that we can reset for our recording purposes of our meeting. So when